Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everyone who is watching us today. My name is Bogdana Vrelinska. I am the head of the Office of UNESCO City of Literature. And today we are gathering here on our live event, LitTransformer Connecting, to talk about translation, translators, practices, little languages, large languages, small, etc., etc. But we will talk about very specific practice that we had last year with the great guys that I'm having here today. I will introduce them first, and then we will start our not short event, you will see, and talk about the LitTransformer, the workshop that we had last year here in Lviv. First, I will include the owner of this idea of LitTransformer, Aaron Agi, who is the director of MFA in Literature Translation at the University of Iowa, the largest program of its kind in the United States. Originally, Aaron is from Turkey. He has translated poetry, fiction, and drama from his mother tongue to his adopted tongue. Ajay leads the MFA translation workshop and teaches courses on retranslation, poetry, and translation and theory. He has given talks and led workshops in the USA, Turkey, and most recently, Armenia. He is also the past president of the American Literary Translators Association. From Lviv, we have Irena Otrehivska, who is associate professor of the Department of Translation Studies and Contrast Linguistics at Ivan Franko National University of Lviv. In 2018, she was affiliated as a Wayne Vucinic Fellow at Stanford University. Her teaching and research interests include translation history and historiography, sociology and ideology of translation, community translation, as well as the reception of the Slavic literature in the Anglophone world. From Bucharest, we have here Roxana. She graduated from the University of Bucharest with a degree of English and Russian studies. She completed her PhD in culture and literature studies at the same university. She is currently lectured in the modern language department at the Karol Davila University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Bucharest. Her research interests cover areas as post-colonial and post-communist studies, world literature, translation, and medical humanities. And from Seoul, we have Mato Manderslot. He is translator from Amsterdam. Now he is based in Seoul because he is translating from Korean into English and into Dutch. Also, he is specialized in the translation of the poetry. That's why he won he is the winner of the Oxford Korean Poetry Translation Prize in 2018 and the World Literature Today Translation Prize in 2018. He has also led poetry translation workshop at the Poetry Translation Center in London. And all these beautiful people are here to talk about LitTransformer. Last year, probably at the same time, we started the workshop here in Lviv, which was held during 10 days. We all lived together, eat together, talked together, translated together from seven different languages through English into other languages. So about the idea of this workshop, what was the previous ideas and practices that precede the LitTransformer here in Lviv? I will ask Aaron, of course. So if you could tell us a little about the history of this experiment, I would be very grateful for that.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. This is such a wonderful, bittersweet reunion. I wish we were there in person. As it was a fantastic experience last year. Well, the background to this has to do with Iowa City in many ways, but also, has a lot more to do with my visit to Lviv a couple of years ago. Let me begin by saying that as a city of literature, Iowa City is really very active in in international literature exchange. We get about 30 writers every fall to hold residency here for 2.5 months. So we are constantly, in fact, involved in translating and what we like to call making literature, making international literature. And so as a community of this sort, we're also keenly aware of how English gets to dominate the global literary discourse and global literary circulation. As a non-native speaker, I have often worried about that because we all are wearing straitjackets when we are trying to communicate with one another in English. We in fact give up on quite a bit of the meaning we are trying to communicate in order to somehow communicate and build build an understanding between us. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to, in fact, create an environment where languages meet each other in much more direct and unmediated fashion. Even though this workshop uses English crib texts, drafts of translations in English, we actually had translators from different languages who do not speak one another's language work together with the help of this crib text to, in fact, translate each other's texts into their native language. It was it was very, very interesting to hear the kinds of conversations that they had to have between them, because they were, in fact, mostly talking about that which also remains untranslatable. And I still remember the conversation that Roxana, you had over the Romanian pastry. That how do you translate this into Icelandic? And it really is a way to understand language through in its deeper experience, if you will. So we tried something last year, ostensibly because 2 years ago, a Fulbright fellow, Hannah Leliv, who was with us in Iowa City, invited me to visit this incredible city, Lviv, where we met the deputy mayor, who quite surprised us when he asked, "So what can we do together?" And almost on the spot, I started talking about this dream of ours, of creating an international translation workshop. And amazingly, the city of Lviv immediately took us up on this, and we started something that I hope will continue and will become an important intersection across cities of literature around Europe as well as the world.
Thank you. But I was also asking, did you had like a previous maybe a practice similar to what we did here in LitTransformer? Because I remember you had this workshop earlier with Turkish and Armenian translators.
Yes. We had a workshop in Armenia, in Dilijan. It was a little different because there what we had 7 translators from the Armenian into Turkish, only one of whom had experience translating literary texts. They were all wonderfully competent, proficient, professional translators from Turkish to Armenian. And we gathered there. The task was to translate Birgül Oğuz's novel Hah, which had won the European Union Literature Prize in 2014, I believe. And we spent 9 days. In the morning we gave work, some theoretical discussion, some workshops, and then all of the translators worked throughout the day. In the evening, we had a very noted Armenian literary editor who joined the group, having looked over the manuscript that the students were working on. Each day he was looking at the manuscript that was being translated the day before. And we created, we had this incredible result, which published, Birgül Oğuz became available in Armenian. What is different about the Lviv experience is that we actually emphasized more than we did in Armenia the theoretical, the intertextual underpinnings of translation practice, but also emphasized the importance of the city of Lviv and how translation has been a vital artery of communication there. And for all of this, Irina was quite indispensable. She gave the lectures on intertextuality and the City of Literature in Lviv, and I think it was really crucial that we moored all this very experimental stuff we were doing in some theory, and so it was really a fantastic collaboration.
So you already mentioned your partner in crime, Irena. So if you could please tell us a bit about your experience as the co-coordinator from Lviv of this extraordinary event, and also about the practice that had students during this event, and what their feedback was about LitTransformer.
Thank you so much, Bogdana. First of all, I want to say hi to all those people who are watching us, because I'm sure there are a lot of students as well there, and to all the former participants and organizers of this event. I'm sure that this last year's translation workshop, LitTransformer, was a truly creative laboratory for all the participants. Among the participants, we had professional translators. Some of them translated over 30 books into their active language, mother tongue. And aside from them, there were some emerging, novel, new translators that were actually the graduates of our Translation Studies Department of the Ivan Franko National University of Lviv. And for them, I think it was a truly mind-blowing, eye-opening, and enriching experience to enter this zone of creativity. At the university, at the BA and master's program in translation, they learn to orient in this large-scale field of translation, and they know the points of compass, where north, south, west, and east. But here they were like on the ground, working with actual translators, tackling different types of texts, materials. And they realized that there are no fast-track solutions, at an operational level, because they had a unique chance to follow the performance, the trajectory of work of every professional translator who was a participant of this translation workshop. And with all this in mind, I'm sure they came to the realization the process of translation is as meaningful as the final product, right? The very final text, target version of the text. In this relation, I believe that all of the students developed, in a way, their relatedness to this professional activity of translation. They had a unique test drive, working in collaboration, this famous concept of trans-collaboration, collaboration in translation. And they develop their sensibility of the language, of the culture. I remember a very unique case when we had a team of a Dutch translator and a Ukrainian translator, our former graduate student. Well, I think Katerina right now is our master's student. But in any case, there was a unique linguistic hybridity in the source text, in the text by Olesya Yaremchuk. And the team, they realized that when we translate, we do not only translate the concept, the cultural phenomenon, but we also translate the experience. And we negotiate in translation because sometimes we can be in a very close proximity, but we can be culturally very distant. And this is the unique case that this arbitrary line of translation brings to the fore. So I believe that was a very unique experience for the university participants, also for the faculty of our university who cooperated a lot and contributed to this event. And I'm sure that we need to continue. There should be a second and a third step going on. Thank you.
Also, I wanted to ask you about what was the most difficult task for you as a coordinator of this event here, because you were, as I was saying, the partner in crime for Aaron, and you had all this very interesting stuff going on between you. You worked on the concept, etc., etc. What was the most difficult for communication, and also maybe some interesting story if you have it? So.
Okay, well, that's a very good question because, Lviv City of Literature gave us a very loud topic of this workshop, LitTransformer. So we realized that we need to have a very transformative program of this workshop. And I think that was one of the biggest challenge to actually draw the program, a schedule of workshops, of classes, of sessions. Because we realized that we have a synergy of different participants coming from different cultures, of different professional level and scale. And at the same time, we realized that this workshop is not about teaching or guiding how to translate. It is rather an event to show how to think about translation. It is rather about translation thinking. And in this case, I believe at times it was quite a challenge to draw the final version of the program, where you have this very cause and effect relationship between the classes, the sessions, and at the same time, from what can you ask from the professional translators who are coming to this workshop? Of course, that is to sharpen their focus. Sometimes to take a step back, to move back to the material and be able to interrogate the answers you gave through the source text in your target rendition. And in this case, we have this kind of a balance of moving back in order to move forward. And I believe that was one of the greatest challenges for us to frame with this within this workshop.
If I can add, I think the whole workshop plan became a reality at the end of the workshop.
Well, yes.
Irena and I worked very hard at the beginning to sort of envision some conceptually how this workshop would go, but we also really kept very close eye on how people were feeling, what questions they were bringing up, and accordingly, we were also shaping this workshop as it went along. I mean, there was a very interesting routine. Irena and I met several times during the week to talk about what we will do the next day. And in fact, most of the slide presentations I gave on any given day, I prepared early in the morning that day, based on what we were doing and thinking, and it really was a wonderful. I mean, I don't think a workshop like this happened before. We were just really creating a path on which to walk, and the participants were amazingly important in the process.
Yes,
Yeah.
if I may add only two statements, I believe that we need to mention here some of the invited professors or invited lecturers to the workshop. They were not the key organizers, but we had wonderful, amazing lectures on presentations given by Hanna Lely, Olena Halata, Ostap Slavinsky, who really emplaced the participants into this city of translation called Lviv here. So it's our sincere gratitude to them, goes to them.
Yeah, it was really the experience to make the program during the process. Yeah, I should say the same because we are the one who printed it at the last minute. But also, yeah, now I will, because you already mentioned our participants, and they are here with us today. With us is Roxana and Mato. And Mato, could you please tell us the story? What was special for you in the LitTransformer, except that you were traveling from a distant island, if I'm not mistaken, to Lviv. So,
Yeah,
what was special about LitTransformer for you? Yeah.
well, apart from the hassle of actually getting to Lviv, indeed, I remember from the closing ceremony that the first thing that most of us said afterwards was that it was very intense, because, yeah, like for the whole week, we did nothing but talk about the same text and try to keep sort of conversation going and keep digging deeper into the text and creating something out of it, and having that sort of time pressure of having to come up with a translation of it by the end of the week was kind of well, straining. But on the bright side, that also it's a unique opportunity to be able to do that for just a whole week. You know, if deadlines and normal work didn't exist, I would love to just do that for eternity. But unfortunately, we have to, earn a living. But like to have the chance to just think about translation and think about the process of translation instead of always, having to produce something was very rewarding, I felt. And it was like, well, Aaron has mentioned it already, but the sort of conversation that happens in between languages, because you're working from a sort of midway text, was also very thought-provoking. Like I'd never experienced anything like it before, and I'm not sure if I ever will again. But it was very very stimulating. I remember.
Yeah. Roxana, and what was the most significant experience that you had during the LitTransformer for you?
Well, I was just thinking now as Martha was speaking about Rilke's idea that human experience is the experience of onceness. Everything happens once. Matthew said that it was in a way so transformative and so creative that he cannot imagine it will happen again. And in a way it was the same for me. It happened once, and in a way it stays there and it will be irrepeatable. Well, at first, I was kind of, I was in a totally foreign city with people from different parts of the world whom I had never met before. So it was hard to adapt. But Aaron and Irene were really, really very driven, and they had a plan. I mean, even if sometimes we didn't have an idea of what the plan was there. And what amazed me actually in the end was that out of this whole chaos or babel of languages and of translations and of people, cultures, and experiences, actually we managed to become a whole. And as Irene said, to not only to do translations together, but to think about translation together. For me personally, I mean, I do translation part-time. It's not my focus, let's say. I always did it. When I didn't do it, I felt I was missing it, but I never thought about it. And LitTransformer was actually the opportunity for me to think about it more seriously. And actually, after LitTransformer, I was transformed as a translator because now I'm really doing serious work. So, yeah.
And you guys also, you guys actually completed the translation you started in Lviv, no? It got published in Iceland, in Romania as well?
Yeah, I have. This is the Romanian magazine. I will
Oh,
show you.
beautiful.
This is, I don't know if you can see it, Gertrude Krisni. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, okay. And this is Gunhildur's translation.
Wow.
So,
That's amazing.
yeah, and actually, this is the Romanian writer, Florina Zărescu. And we made a pact. So at the end of the translation, we put both our names, because even if I don't know Icelandic and even if she doesn't know Romanian, in a way we did it together. So
absolutely, yeah.
That's a great news, because I'm having here also our journal. Yes, after the LitTransformer, I was reading it before our event. And there's everybody is saying that this whole process was like a big fight for everyone who was participating and translating. I think we have a bit of problem with Roxana. Are you with us? Uh-oh.
Probably she'll hear.
She'll be back. Yeah.
Well, everybody, in every text about the LitTransformer, it was very intense, as Mata said. And also everybody is saying it was like a fight. You are doing the fight with something and fighting for something. So I have a question for you too. What you were fighting with and for? Roxana, if you can tell us. During the process of the LitTransformer, what was the most important for you?
well, I mean, I had a fight with, all my life I had fights with a lot of things. And I think that actually, unless most people who think fights are not, well, good, I think that fights are creative, because when you grapple with things and when you wrestle with them, you make them in a way more creative or more productive. Well, I mean, first of all, I had a fight with myself, because I was in a way forced. I'm very busy and I have a lot of things, but there I was just me, my translation, and I was forced to rethink my idea of translation and to rethink myself as a translator and to really think about what made me do translations and what made me pay attention to them. And then, of course, there was, this fight to. Another thing I actually liked was this multilingual diversity, because I like languages. I mean, I started learning a little bit of Ukrainian. Now, actually, I'm starting to learn a little bit of Yiddish. So, I mean, what I also liked was the fact that there were so many languages, and I fought actually to learn, or at least to understand, to have an idea about each one of them and how they function, because languages, I mean, we know the grammatical part and the syntax and whatever, but they also have a kind of, I mean, like humans, like people, they have a spirit. And even if you cannot understand the language, just by, I don't know, experiencing it, in a way you can be part of the spirit, or you can understand a little bit of it.
And well, when we are talking about Mata was translating from Catalan through English to Korean, and Korean.
No, Dutch.
Into Dutch. Yeah, but I translate out of Korean.
Dutch. Yeah, it was more. I was checking it yesterday, but still didn't understand how you do it. Sorry, I'm not translating. So what you have, like, you were working in two not native languages.
Right.
Yeah. So probably what will be next? What the next language you want to add to this, maybe, or do you want to do the translation from something very, very special?
Well, I remember within the process, because Catalan was obviously not a language I knew, and the text that my co-translator provided, the English text, was very lucid and understandable. But sometimes I would cheat a little bit and ask her for, oh, what was the original? What was the Catalan? And if it had some resemblance with either French or like Italian, because I studied Latin as well, like I could cheat a little bit and like try to piece things together from the original. But for her, that was not the case, because I gave her an English text from the Korean, and she had no knowledge of Korean whatsoever. So for her, she was completely in the dark. And whenever she had a question, whenever my English crib was like for her baffling, then she had to ask me, and I was her only source of knowledge about the text. Like she could never make any sense of it. So that was a weird balance there. But for me, if we're talking about fights, fight might be a big word, but because obviously the co-translator chose the text that they wanted to introduce to the workshop, my co-translator chose a genre-specific text because it was a play, part of a play, a monologue, and I'd never translated something like that before. So my struggle was mostly with how to deal with the fact that it was not a text that I'm used to, and it was also from a different era, like it was from the 19-something. So I was totally out of my comfort zone and had to really rely on her knowledge of the text to bring it into Dutch, because even looking at the English, there's a lot of times when you just need the input from the other translator who really knows what the text is about. Like obviously the English is already sort of one step towards helping, pushing you in the right direction, but there's like so many ways that you can misinterpret the English midway text, and then you need to confer with the co-translator. So that was the process.
Can I say a little bit here, because as I'm listening to Roxana and Mato, I just also realized some things that that are worth mentioning here. You know, translation practice is lopsidedly focused on the target language. You know, we expect the translator to have the target language as their native language. We expect them to also know the source language as if they have native proficiency, but quite often in the actual experience of translation, what happens is that it's more like trying to force the source language and culture into the familiar language, which is their native language. What we try to do in this workshop is almost entirely about unsettling this paradigm, right? So we gave the translator the task of translating a text from a language they did not understand, and therefore were completely dependent on a native speaker of that language. This was very important because, you know, there is a very big debate going on right now in translation, and in part because of the changes in the practice. An increasing number of bilingual translators are now active. Because, you know, if you wait for the English speakers to learn the world's languages, nothing will be translated. Well, nothing is not true, of course, but very little will be translated. So a lot of us are feeling like we have to, in fact, step up to the plate and do translating ourselves, because we happen to have a much stronger grasp of the English language than the Anglo speakers will ever have of our languages. And so as a result, what we were trying to do was to sort of actually prioritize the source language, but also as a puzzle, as a mystery, as an enigma, rather than how we often approach it when we're translating, which is, I'll do it the way I know. And so this context is one where the translator has to constantly reassess the assumptions they bring into the translation process about the relationship between the languages, about what is translatable and what is not. And in fact, start doubting, if you will, some of the quick fixes that we think work well in the service of the source language, when it doesn't, when these quick fixes are exactly that. I know that fight is a very strong word, but I also think that we did put you guys in a stressful situation, right? I mean, we asked you to do something that you indeed would not have done. And lastly, I want to say, when I start our workshops here, the translation workshop with our graduate students in the MFA program, the very first exercise they do is, in fact, translate an English poem, a poem in English, into their source languages. And they all go, "Oh, what is this? We can't do this." But the whole point is to approach translation with a beginner's mind, rather than a mind that is already made up about what this language is saying. So it was just really, I'm sorry to say, but I really liked it. It was just really a wonderful experience. Irina, maybe you want to add something here?
Well, can I say one thing that might be a great example of approaching something with a beginner's mind? Because within our team, we had a Catalan translator, me, and then as every team, we had one Ukrainian student who had to translate into Ukrainian. And so the Korean text that was traveling into Ukrainian had posed some difficulties that I didn't even know existed, because I just took a lot of things for granted. So, for example, when you translate Korean into English, there are just sort of standardized rules of how to Romanize Korean words, and how to what sort of Korean words you can keep in the Korean, I guess, and what sort of words you have to translate. But when we started trying to translate it into Ukrainian with the student, she kind of ran into the trouble that there were no sort of rules set out yet for how to write Korean words in the Cyrillic alphabet, or put them into her own language. So then I was like, well, what is she supposed to do? Like, I have this sort of structure that I can rely on as a translator, but she just has to make up her own. Like, does she have the right to just come up with her own system, or that kind of thing? So that was very, mind-blowing and eye-opening.
Yeah, but if we think about it, I think that the first people who met and they were like native speakers to different languages, they were doing the same, making rules. So probably, Irina, do you want to say something about fights that we had with languages?
Well, I think that the workshop was rather peaceful. At least that was my assumption at the very end of it. But I just want to add to this general topic that we are right now tackling. This is the problem of indirect translations, right? Translations through the mediating language. And I think this tendency, this trend right now is showing this shifting geometry in translation studies generally, because, we talk a lot about sustainability in terms of poverty, economy, social justice, right? But at the same time, we need to talk about linguistic sustainability. And in this regard, translation becomes a very strong bond that shows us that we can connect with each other, but preserving the linguistic justice. And this is the point when we have Korean English system of standardization, but we do not have perhaps Korean Ukrainian or Korean Slovakian or Korean Czech. So in this regard, we have this problem of low diffusion languages, right, as we call. And I think that is what these workshops bring to us, that through English as a bridge language, as a mediating language, we can have translations from very from the languages that are not that widely spoken in this world, right? So that have their own locality, let's put on the map. In this regard, this is the greatest asset of this workshop, because right now we have Ukrainian translation of Catalan drama from a Korean piece, or we have the Dutch translation of the Ukrainian contemporary nonfiction award-winning book. So in this regard, this is something that totally changes the balance and those, I think, some negative attitudes that we had previously to indirect translations. And this phenomenon brings us today a very important issue of linguistic justice and linguistic sustainability on the global scale.
So, and we have, by the way, the question that is like the question to what we are talking about now, the main topic, that do you think that experience of the LitTransformer could well extend into the new normal of the digital world? Do you have any plan for this? Yes, we want to be the rulers of the world, but I don't think so. But please, Aaron, could you answer this question? Could this be the practice that we are going to in the future?
Well, one of the key ingredients of this experience was that we held it, with the exception of our incredible hosts in Lviv, we all held it in a foreign city. Most of us had arrived there for the first time. I certainly had come there the year before, but this was in fact the very first time I spent 12 days, 13 days in a city. I've been really thinking about this digital medium because, Bogdana, you mentioned that maybe we'll do something digitally. Yes, we could do something digitally, and you could, in fact, have conversations with each other. But I think the experience would not be the same. I really don't think the experience would be the same. In our own environment, we also, what Irena is talking about, this linguistic justice, in our own environment, we also are embodying, and we are embodied by certain presuppositions about language. And to get out of that, I mean, one of the things that I like when I go to places where I don't speak the language, I walk myself into intense crowds to almost, experience this complete loss of understanding, to perhaps bring out, or maybe not bring out, but to reactivate all my other senses that are at work in understanding human relations. And I think those are things that would not happen if we were doing this in a digital platform. I mean, I don't know how others think, but I mean, I hope we will be able to return to some degree of normalcy where we can do this in person again, because it really was incredible. You know, we ate breakfast together, we ate lunches together, we ate dinners together. I mean, these were really crucial.
I remember the kumpe.
The kumpa.
Advertisement in the TV show. So sorry. Say hi to our partners. Yes.
I don't know. What do you feel?
Yeah, Roxana, maybe you will say something more. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same. I think the same as Aaron. I think that Lviv. I think that the presentation. I mean, for me, even that visit in the labyrinth of the library in Lviv, because the visit actually turned into a kind of concept that helped me understand my experience, and without it, it wouldn't have been the same. So actually, I think that being there with all the people, being involved in what you guys organized, I mean, that night, everything was important, and everything had contributed something to to gluing us together, to making us function together, to making us think together. I don't know. Yeah.
Mato?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think if you're talking about breaking the mold and sort of dismantling your own conceptions of translation, then the first step is to get out of your daily routine. And if it's an online space, then I really fear that it's too easy to just like close your laptop and go back to what you normally do, and just see it as your like 1 hour of, or maybe a few hours where you engage, but then you just relapse immediately into your normal routine. And if you're physically forced to step out of that, then I think that's a beginning of like reaching something new.
As Aaron, yeah, of course.
If I may, I can only add that digital world does offer us translation as an instrumental process, right? That we can translate. But on the other hand, we cannot presence translation in our living world, like Lebenswelt, because then we do not feel that translational equivalence is the one we always talk about. It's entangled in the social, cultural, historical setting. And in this regard, I think this is the major force of this workshop, that it allows us to translation and to feel it into reality in the everyday discussion in the city that was once a multilingual and multicultural one. So all these aspects, these tiny aspects, you know, they create a large puzzle, which unfortunately the digital world would lack to present.
And I wanted to talk about with Irana first about the next LitTransformer, because we are thinking here to move it to the 2021. That's the reality that we are having now. The theme of the LitTransformer is still translating the city, and we are translating this time. I hope it will work next year, the poetry. And it was the decision of Aaron and Irana. We met each other in Lviv in winter, yes, if I remember correct, before everything collapsed. And we were already dreaming that we will do all this in the beginning of the June, and now we have the beginning of July, and I don't think that we will manage this year. But what do you think about this theme, about the questions, about the dialogue, according to what is happening now? Because we are in the innovation, everybody is in the different point on the map. We are with Irina in the same city, but we didn't see each other, I think, for 4 or 5 months already. Yeah. So what is the message of the LitTransformer to the situations like this that we're having now? Irana?
Well, it's a very global question, I believe, and a very challenging one. And I'm not sure that anyone would be able to give a definite answer to it. The fact is, what is a fact is that each participant of such a workshop, each potential participant of this workshop, would represent a language, a culture, but also this participant would represent a certain, let's call it translational space, right? Where translation is positioned in this or that way, where the impact of translation is different depending on the space you come from. And what the workshop offers is, I think it is Arona who once used it in the introduction to this anthology that you published after the workshop, called an interspace. So we have several translation spaces that are represented by participants, and this workshop creates this, the second order interspace. And if this interspace becomes a city of Lviv, and we view the source translation spaces as the cities that these translators come from and represent for us, I think this is a very unique perspective that offers us the globalization, but in one locale, right? What Michael Cronin calls microcosmopolitanism. And I think this optics is very enriching and is very rewarding for each and every one of us in this transformative period and epoch that we are living in. I have no idea how this workshop may run in the other mode, but not in person, because I'm not sure that it would be feasible and very practical and that impactful as it was last year when we all met face-to-face in a regular mode. So I cannot jump to the future to answer this question in a very well-organized, well-mannered way, but I believe that there is a future of this workshop. That's the most important.
Maybe I can say something. This is sort of how I'm just going to grasp at things to figure, to maybe give an answer here, because it is. I agree with Irena entirely that the future is so blurry right now with regards to how we will come out of this and where we will be, how we will recreate our spaces. So I don't know any of this myself either. But, just let's think about what cities of literature are. The UNESCO Cities of Literature, they are in fact each an interspace. In fact, we can even push this even further and say that without any scientific evidence, I'm going to make a speculation that a city is by its very definition an interspace. People don't need cities unless to come to. Now they can settle there, but we are seeing, in fact, increasingly since the pandemic outbreaks happen to hit the major cities in a very different and more powerful ways, cities cannot function when self-enclosed. They just can't. Even this little Iowa city, which is, I'm not going to even tell you how many people live here. Just go and Google it. We are a very happy little town, but even here we are seeing, shop after shop closing. We have, in fact, some incredibly important cultural organizations that we don't know if they're going to come back. So in an environment like this, I think what this workshop, and I hope we will have it as we hope in person in Lviv, what this workshop also aims to do is to send the participants back into their own cities with a greater awareness and perhaps a greater desire to make these spaces more of an interspace, or maybe to capitalize on that much more actively. Roxana, you teach a lot of international students. You know, that is something that people don't immediately associate when one thinks about Bucharest, right? But this is what our new reality is. And I think that's why thinking about the city as part of this, as a focus of this workshop, is going to be really pretty useful for us in the long run, because we really are now discovering a lot of the ways in which our concept of cultural exchange, our concept of ourselves, our cultures, our cities, all of these have vulnerabilities that we're experiencing right now.
Thank you. Do anybody wants to add something? Yeah, after Aaron is like
I was
silent.
thinking.
Yeah, everybody was like a bit in the hypnosis after
Well,
that.
I want to add, actually, because Aaron mentioned the fact that I teach foreign students, that actually the Lviv experience helped me this year when I had my first class of, I'm teaching Romanian to Romanian children that come from abroad, which means that I had a class of Romanian children coming from the States, Germany, Greece, each speaking Romanian with the influences of that of a language. It was unbelievably difficult, but the experience in Lviv, in a way, helped me deal with it and understand that, I don't need to correct all the time a certain accent, and if they speak Romanian with a t, like the Greeks, everybody has a t in there, or with an American accent or whatever, this is fine. They just should learn to develop their language or Romanian in their particular ways. And it was extremely interesting also, because I saw in a way that Romanian was an international language. It was spoken in various ways by different people with a lot of words from other languages.
Yeah.
I think this is the influence of this workshop, that we start to engage with our own subjectivities, right? And it really dispels some assumptions that we previously had, and we start questioning so many things that we thought that we have an answer to, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is what lifelong learning, let's call it. Translation is lifelong learning is about.
Yeah, it was a bit of open, like we open our minds, because that I always said that my English is not very well all the time. I know you.
It's great.
No, I'm still working.
You are very charismatic, You don't hear your English, we hear you.
Yeah,
So.
but at the same time, when I was listening to everybody who was speaking English not perfectly, it was like, great, now I'm not alone. But at the same time, it was a bit different English every time, as Roxana was saying. And we are talking in about an hour. We don't have any other questions, as I can see, but I have the last question to you guys. What would be the one word that you will say why you should, or one sentence why you should come next year to LitTransformer? Irana?
So let's call it like this. So if you are a translator and you want to challenge yourself, come to the LitTransformer.
Aaron?
Oh. Isn't there anybody else who could go next? The hardest thing for me is to say something in one word or one sentence.
Well, I'll say one word because I'm afraid that Roxana is going to say it too, and then I don't know what I'm going to say. So, no, but it's a word that's been mentioned throughout this broadcast, and I think transformation is still.
Yes, definitely.
But it's just it
And
captures.
you'll be sorry. And you'll be sorry if you don't have this experience. You don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like saying that Roxana also said transformation because you added it. So Aaron, now you. why you should go to LitTransformer next year.
What else are you going to do? I mean, this is this is I mean, again, translation practice and thinking about translation, both of them are going through incredible changes right now, and we are experiencing them only from our own corners. And this kind of an experience of bringing 6 to 8 people from different cities, different languages, is also an experience of being exposed to 6 to 8 different perspectives on translation. Oh, you do that? Oh, no, I don't do it that way, but maybe I should try it that way. Or the deeper questions of what languages do we welcome when we claim to be a cosmopolitan environment, and what languages we don't, without even noticing what languages get eclipsed in our cosmopolitan environments. I mean, there are many, many ways of thinking about translation that directly impact how we translate. Plus, we also do some really crazy exercises. We should also mention the whole sound experience. The sonic experience of translation. So, as I said, come to Lviv.
Thank you guys so much for this event, that you all agreed in the different point on the map of the world. And I hope we will see each other maybe once more. I hope that we will see Aaron next year in Lviv. And good night to Seoul. Good evening, I think, to Bucharest. And have a nice working day, Aaron, in Iowa City. And he's watching us, because I saw that he commented on our broadcast. So thank you so much for this. And
thank you too for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you again.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.